Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't have worked with Nike, honestly, if they weren't going to credit me like that. So it's worth it when you can position yourself, and you start with small brands and eventually it scales up.
As designers, we know how important an online portfolio is, which is why I'm happy to announce today's podcast sponsor, Zyro. Zyro is a cool online website builder that's perfect for making your portfolio. I like Zyro because it's super easy to use, the most affordable option on the market, and they offer 24/7 support. Zyro is the perfect place for setting up an online portfolio or even an online store. All the Zyro website plans come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you change your mind, you can cancel your subscription at any time and get your money back. For a limited time only, you can get an exclusive discount plus 3 months free with any yearly plan. All you got to do is use my code Jesse, Jesse, or click the link in the description. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jesse Nyberg Podcast. Today I'm here with Efdot, talented designer, artist, illustrator, a bunch of other things. How you doing?
Doing well, Jesse. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing this actually a little bit earlier than usual because I want to be able to edit it today, and I'm glad I got the coffee and everything so I could be awake enough.
Yeah, I'm drinking some coffee here too. Cheers.
I remember I hit you up like a long time ago and we were trying to make this work out, and then you were busy with some stuff, and then I kind of just like fell off a little bit, and then I remember it was like a month ago, your manager guy for like the stolen stuff, he hit me up and he was like, I want you to interview one of my artists. And I was like, yeah, sure. Who? And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I already tried to interview this dude a long time ago.
Yeah. Glad we're making it happen now. That's a new partnership. I'm with this new agency, so I'm glad he reached out and got this going. Yeah.
How is that as like an artist, having like a manager and stuff like that? Is that, do you like that because it kind of frees you up for more of your creative pursuits and things?
Yeah, I think running a creative business, it's so many decisions to make, not just about what to offer, but how much, where, when, how to time, how to fit everything into the context of your body, of your work, is something I struggle with. So leaning on my manager to be a bouncing board has been really helpful to help me weigh opportunities, to say whether this is worth taking on or let's wait for the next thing to come through. Has been amazing. I did have a manager working with me on my team full time, and more recently I've been having this new arrangement where there's like a roster of artists and I'm one of the artists. Like, was there a certain point in your career that you felt like, oh, I'm going to need something like this now? It's just getting pretty busy. I think so. I left my full-time job like 2.5 years ago. I was working at WeWork for 3.5 years on their art and graphics team, doing all the different spaces in their co-working spaces, like murals and interior art. And once I left there and started doing freelance, I got really busy really quickly. And as soon as I could afford to have help, I started hiring help, whether it was just like an assistant and then eventually a manager. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of that, you have like, I feel like you have a really recognizable style. And I think that it seems like I'm looking at some of your older stuff, it's evolved over time. And I was curious, how was it different, the times when you were more like a graphic designer, I guess, per se? I was looking at your older stuff versus like to now. What has that change been like over the past like 8-10 years or whatever? Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of ups and downs, and like the journey has been all over the place, not a straight line. I think when we're all getting started in design and art, we want to have a style, and sometimes we're looking and seeing what's popular or seeing what we resonate with and mimicking or remixing or we don't know how to be ourselves on the page yet fully, or we don't feel like we have permission to do that. And so in the beginning, I really found a home in hand lettering and typography as my main thing. I even called myself a lettering artist for years, like exclusively. And I wanted to find my own lettering style, and I found things started to come out over the years, like bigger, bolder, blobbier forms, the play of positive and negative space. So a lot of that stuff still remains true to how I draw today, even though I don't do it quite as much lettering, or I've just expanded way outside of type. but I didn't have a guiding compass inside of me to like help me make those decisions besides just intuition, besides just, does this feel like me? Does this feel right? Does this feel balanced? Does this feel fresh? I'm always asking myself those questions and learning from the things around me. You know, working at WeWork was huge, getting the validation of the creative directors and the artists there, like seeing how everyone else worked. And that really like opened me up a lot, but it's been all over the place. Like I could talk about it for hours. Yeah.
It seems like, too, looking at like what you've done before all the way to now, it got more and more like from design into more fine art and like painting and doing the murals and whatnot. But the WeWork was almost like the perfect like limbo period in between those two worlds, because you were doing like the murals and stuff you said, but it was still more like a corporate job or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And I think that's really where I cultivated my taste in fine art, because we were curating fine art for the spaces, and we were approaching fine art through the lens of a designer, like designing a space where the whole space has to feel balanced and curated and has a local flavor, maybe even bringing in some local artists' work, which was awesome to do. So I think about fine art through the lens of a designer, and I think I just have more fun when I can really express myself and play with the perception of art versus trying to always like sell something with a marketing design or just do a logo I used to do a lot of those types of projects, logos and design. And I think I just stopped getting as much fulfillment when I couldn't really see my vision through. Yeah.
So I remember you saying, I think it was in the Tops, like little like spotlight video thing, you said something along the lines of, it took you like a long time to like stop, like unlearn all the design rules and like boxes that they kind of place you in, that to get your own style, it took you a while to, I guess, be comfortable like breaking those rules that you kind of hammered into your brain.
Oh yeah, definitely. When we're in design school, it's all about getting everything to look purposeful. And if anything looks like an accident, it's called out in the critique. And I think that you can critique fine art like that, but it's much more open to interpretation, and there aren't as many rules, and the rules are meant to be broken in fine art, especially since like the pop art era of 20th century. So it's a lot less formal and goal oriented, and more like you get the control as the artist to make the rules and the narrative. My definition of art and fine art has exploded in the last year more than it was before, of like what can be art. I now think like showing up online and being yourself is like a form of art, even if you're not posting images.
There's also been, like, I've noticed in the past even like 2 years or so, like just posting designs and doing stuff online, the world of like art and design has gotten a lot more blurred just in general. Like a lot of people that are like designers or call themselves designers and maybe work in a medium or space that was traditionally just graphic design. Yeah, it looks like that still, but it's also more art because they're not necessarily doing things for clients, maybe they're doing just like commissioned art or just NFTs or like just stuff for fun. So I feel like the internet has kind of muddied like the definition between those two worlds a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's cool you mentioned the murals, because before, graphic designers didn't really paint that many murals. It was a separate industry, and it was a craft, and graphic designers worked in indoors mainly. Then once we kind of saw some examples of artists, I'm not going to really name a bunch of names right now, but a few people come to mind, like those early pioneer designers who brought their work to a large scale and got it hand painted or did it themselves. Those two worlds started to blend more and more. And now that kind of became the sexy dream job for a lot of artists or designers to be able to do both, to design indoors, work on the computer, iPad, whatever, but then take it to the street or take it to a large wall indoors and blow it up and get away from the screen for a day or two and just paint. And that was like the balance that I was always striving for, and getting closer and closer to, being able to pick up whatever medium I want on any given day and just make stuff. I love it. Right.
I think too, one of the main differences I realize, like when an artist or designer works with a brand, like let's say you worked, with the Air Max stuff or Tops, things like that. Like, I feel like what makes them an artist is when it's like Nike and you, not just like you just did the project and no one knows you did it. It almost, when it seems more like a collaboration, I feel like those people are looked at more like, oh, this is an artist collaboration rather than they hired you to, you know, design a new shoe or make a logo or whatever it may be.
Yeah, because we're getting credit now more as artists, and people are demanding credit because it's a lot of these things that used to be done, or like I think things are changing a lot with how people view artists and their role in society. And of course, there's always like the influencer artist, there's designer as artist, and that's kind of where a lot of us are falling into now, where brands want to reach our audiences, and in order to do that, they got to give us credit and put us front and center, because then it's a mutual agreement, right? Yeah. So I probably wouldn't have worked with Nike, honestly, if they weren't going to credit me like that. So it's worth it when you can position yourself, and but you start with small brands and eventually it scales up.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, I've even noticed some of that stuff with doing not as much like a collaboration where I'm being credited like for work, but even when you mentioned like the design like influencer or whatever you want to call it, because I've done some like ads and stuff just with the podcast or YouTube and things, and I never thought just as a designer I'd be like making like an ad read, you know, for some kind of like website builder or whatever. Like it's interesting how it feels like now is kind of the best time than ever to be like a creative, because you have so many like avenues, and it feels like we're getting a lot more control than like ever before in history.
For sure. And that's what happens when you put your voice out there. You know, you're a designer, but you're also doing this show consistently for years over time. Yeah. And so your audience really has built up a trust with you, and that's what the brands want, is they want you to reach. Obviously your design skills matter, but what's more important, I think, is the trust you've built with your audience, so that when you do recommend their brand or their product, it comes off authentic, and people actually like trust you, because there's so much bad advertising out there that people don't. Yeah. Like people's radar for BS has just gone. Everyone has such a strong radar for BS.
Yeah, for real. I mean, it's really hard for me to even want to listen to a recommendation from the people I do trust. So I'm definitely not going to watch like some bullshit ad. I wanted to ask you, because I seen you mentioning on Twitter and stuff a little bit like, how you're getting a lot of these more opportunities now and these big works, and like it hasn't been, you know, it's obviously been a journey, and you said something like the other day, like when it rains it pours or whatever, and like what was it kind of like though when you were first starting out, and what kind of helped you keep on going and like having like this, I guess, drive to get to where you are now? Because I'm sure when it first started, it wasn't nearly as like obviously this big old thing that you've built out.
Yeah. So I went to college in Philadelphia and finished in 2012. And so that was when I really started my career. I had done some freelance gigs and an internship before that, but I moved to New York and had a lot of dreams of becoming like a creative director or a well-known designer in New York. And I thought that I wanted to be one version of a successful creative. And then over time, I realized that was a narrative that I was sort of seeing as like, all these people are so successful and I want to be like them. But over time, I learned I want to be more like myself. And what I am more is an artist, not an art director or designer by the traditional sense, but the labels are less important. When I was getting started, I didn't have a lot of clients. I didn't have a great portfolio. I had this hodgepodge of a portfolio that I graduated with, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But I knew that I liked lettering and type, as well as photo, video, branding, a couple other things. So I focused on how can I combine all those things into personal projects, and that way I could attract client projects. Because I had some full-time work, but it wasn't long-lasting stuff. It was like 3 months at a time. I would work at these agencies or these brands, and I would always be doing stuff on the outside to try to get my work out there. I was also one of, I guess, like the second or third wave of Instagram artists to really invest in that platform and build a portfolio on Instagram. So I was putting my lettering on Instagram as much as I could, hoping for those like small wins. You know, a cafe would hit me up and I would do a chalkboard menu, or I would have to sometimes walk into these restaurants and local businesses and pitch myself and pitch my work to them and tell them how I was listening to a lot of podcasts so that I could position my work in a better way, like different different types of business podcasts really helped me out to make me understand how to get clients, how to keep clients, how to treat them well. And I just practiced all that, and I held on to those small wins, and that's what kept me going and kept me motivated. And I saw my lettering work improving too. So that was really how I stayed motivated, seeing that long-term picture.
Yeah. Yeah. When you first did like a mural like that, what was that experience like on like the first maybe big thing you did, working outside and everything?
The first one outside? My first one actually was inside.
Oh, okay.
But
sure then.
Yeah. I'll tell you the first one inside, which led to the first one outside.
Okay.
I was working at an agency. This was like 2015. It was an agency that did events and different experiential marketing things. So I was already designing things that were getting printed on vinyl for clients on a large scale. But the next day or the day after the event, things would just get tossed and recycled or thrown in the trash. And so that was disheartening to put all that work into it and then see it get thrown away. Even though it wasn't really a mural, it was more like branded graphics. It still felt like I was putting a lot of love into those. So I wanted something more permanent that could be more than a day or two. And so I did a mural on the chalkboard that was at the office. And I just stayed late one night and I did a big piece. It was right around the holidays. So I did a holidays themed mural. The next day people walked in and I got to see that reaction of like, whoa, like no one's done this before here. People wanted to take pictures and share it because it was like perfect for holidays. And I loved that. I loved seeing the people interact with the art on a large scale. And so that kind of became instantly addicting. And I wanted to bring that out to the public, but no one was giving me permission to do murals. And you can get in a lot of trouble, obviously, if you just go and try to paint in New York. And I'm not that kind of artist typically. So I did a lot of mock-ups. I would go around and I would take photos of walls and use Photoshop and put my designs on them. And then I would pitch them to the businesses. And after a few dozen places, I started getting yeses. And some of them would take years to come back to me and give me the wall. But the first yes was a pretty crazy location. It was in Union Square, pretty close to the middle of Manhattan. And it was a restaurant. I was like photographing the best walls I could find, right? Like shooting for the stars. Yeah. And so one of them, that was the first one to say yes. And it was this mural that said Sunday Kind of Love. And it was a lettering piece inspired by Etta James, that song, Sunday Kind of Love. And yeah, just getting that up in Union Square was incredible. Like seeing the reactions of the tourists and people, and it's not there anymore. It got covered up a couple of years back. But I was really just living the dream. It felt like getting to put some art up outside, and I had put a lot of work in to get that gig. So it was just really gratifying to finally get a yes.
And even if it got covered up after a few years, it's better than that one day event or whatever, when the vinyl would get all scrapped. I think the chalkboard thing, that's like a really important lesson for people and things. Like you didn't have to do that, like no one was guaranteeing you anything out of staying late that night and like just kind of going with your gut and thinking like, I just want to make this cool shit. And that's how I feel like on a smaller scale, like why it's good to always be like putting out work online and things like that, just for fun, because you never really know what opportunities can come out of just like being yourself and putting out the stuff that you want to do rather than like only client work and things.
For sure. And you can even create your own series like that. Like we ended up doing more than one chalkboard. We would have every month a new friend of mine would come in after hours and we would do a chalkboard together. And
that's dope.
We would just chat and learn about each other's practices. And some of these people weren't even based in my city. They were just visiting. And I would say, come to my office. I mean, when you have when you're working in a cool office, you want to like maximize that. So invite people over and
sure,
so that was really cool to bring other artists in and make it into a series, even though it was just a personal project. And I was just practicing, really. I wanted to practice, and you have to want it. If you don't want it, then you're just wanting the result, not the process.
I was looking at just your Instagram bio, and then I also heard you talk a little bit about it in another interview. I was wondering how your kind of journey's been as an artist with the colorblind stuff?
So when I was a kid, my grandfather diagnosed me as colorblind because he was an eye doctor. And I didn't really know what it meant because I only knew what I knew in terms of the colors I can see. Right. And I still don't really know fully what it means because I don't know what colors you see. I only know what colors I see. And my theory is that everybody sees color slightly differently. And red for me is slightly different than red for you, even if I wasn't colorblind. So it's imperceivable though, the differences. So it's just a theory of perception. Like red isn't red. It's like just the perception of red. And everybody sees that a little bit differently. But when I started to take art more seriously as a career, I saw it as a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Like I won't be able to work with color as confidently as other people because it's mainly the dark colors and the light colors that are trouble for me. The saturated colors, no problem. I can tell you when something is clearly yellow or any color in the rainbow, I can tell you. But when it gets washed out or when it gets darkened so much that there's barely any color left, I'm really not always sure, especially when the lighting is dim or if the lighting is colored, it really messes with my eyes. And I start I just don't even want to say anything because I can't tell what color things are. And I've made a lot of mistakes in the past with even buying pants the wrong color.
Oh, okay.
But in my work, I leaned into the tools I had. So in Adobe, you have the color sliders. So you can literally tell like how much of each color is in the color you're working with.
Right.
And that helped a lot. But I think I was very reserved in the beginning, and I did a lot of black and white illustration and lettering before I did anything with color in my personal work. And I just avoided it for years. I also felt like the black and white was foundational. Like if you can draw great compositions in black and white, if you can design in black and white, then it's going to get enhanced when you add color, most likely, instead of trying to add color to something that doesn't even look great in black and white yet.
Or just rely on the color for like the whole concept pretty much.
Right. So a few years of black and white, and it was a great foundational thing because then I could build on that and do the same concepts in color or explore new concepts with color. But it was through that time at WeWork, I think, where I got permission to go crazy with color. They wanted everything to be vibrant in their spaces, or they wanted a balance of like vibrant and muted stuff. But they wanted a lot of the murals to be vibrant that we did. So it was a great exercise, just like breaking out of my shell and trying color. And now I feel like I have a palette that I'm really in love with, and it feels like my own style of color work. And I just rely on those saturated colors that I can always trust to see. Yeah.
I mean, looking at your work, that kind of all adds up because everything is like, whatever the color is, it's very much like that color, 90 to 100% of like saturation or whatever. And it's interesting hearing that whole like in reading about the colorblind thing, because if you look at your work now, like the color seems like such a important factor, and like it seems like you know what you're doing with color. So like it's cool that you've obviously like had that and it didn't really affect you in the long run or anything.
Yeah, and I keep the colorblind thing in there sometimes because I want people. It's a fun conversation starter because it is true, but I don't let it affect my work. And it's a fun, memorable thing that people see my colorful work, and then like something doesn't add up there. Like he's colorblind, but he makes this stuff, and it just like it almost makes the work more. You can appreciate it more because of the story. And I did have to conquer that. It wasn't like I always could make this colorful work. It was like a part of that journey. One more thing I wanted to add, just like a cool tip that I learned. So primary colors are obviously like the most foundational colors, but once you start mixing them together and doing secondary, tertiary colors, it starts to feel more like a graphic designer's palette than an artist's palette, because when you take paint straight out of the tube and you put it on the canvas, it's more like the primary colors usually. And that's a lot of what fine artists used it over the last years. They didn't have the freedom to choose every color in the spectrum on the color wheel like as easy as we can with Procreate or with Illustrator. So those palettes of primaries plus a few extras became my staple, because I wanted it to feel less like a graphic designer made it and more like an artist made it.
Yeah, that's true, because it's so easy to like just slide around on the like hue like in slider and just find some weird like green that would take you a while to like mix together in acrylic or whatever. Yeah, I never really thought about it like that. That adds up too, because I remember I look at some people's work and it feels very like artistic and playful, and then I look at it and they're kind of using those basic reds and blues and yellows, and it's very like, yeah, just simple, I guess. That's a good good tip. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and now is a better time than ever to use Zyro to create a new online portfolio or finally set up that online store you've been wanting to. I like Zyro because it's super easy to use and the most affordable option on the market. All the Zyro website plans also come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can cancel your subscription at any point and get your money back. For a limited time only, you can get an exclusive discount plus 3 months free with any yearly plan. All you gotta do is use my code Jesse, Jesse, or click the link in the description. We spoke a little bit about it, but working with these kind of giant legacy brands like Nike and Topps and all that, what has kind of that experience been like working, let's just say Nike, for example, working with them and just seeing your work at like such a grand scale and like actually seeing your name, you know, right there next to the logo and everything?
It's wild, man. I haven't really processed the Nike one yet because it was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool to be able to see my name and my logo next to theirs, like make it official. And every time I get to put it next to another big logo that I grew up looking at or redrawing sometimes in my school notebooks, drawing these logos, and getting to put my name next to it is surreal. It doesn't feel like I deserve all this, or it doesn't feel like I don't know. It just doesn't, it feels like I'm building something awesome, but I don't really know what fully Efdot means to people. Like when they see my logo, hopefully they think about the art and the values that I bake into the art. It's an art-based brand. It's a nickname of mine also, but it's about the art. Like I'm very art forward, and I suppose my lifestyle as well, like bakes into the feelings that you get, but I don't know. It's surreal. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah. That one specifically like seems like it must have been rewarding because you obviously skate and all that, so it's not like something that, you know, it actually connects with like the ethos of your whole like character and everything.
Yeah, that's one of the things we gotta make calls about is like brands are gonna keep approaching you as an artist or a designer, and it's easy to say yes to them because they have an audience, they have a budget, they have a recognition. But if it's not the right fit, like if a certain shoe brand came to me and I just don't even wear those shoes, or I never thought about wearing those shoes, like I was aware of them, but I never was into it. Sure. It's tempting to say yes because it's a platform, but it's better, I think, when you can get that fit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite kind of brand you worked with before that one?
I really enjoyed the Topps project. That went on for 2 years, so it's hard to compare my other brand work to that.
Right.
But I did a piece for Coca-Cola as well that got put in their Times Square New Year's Eve like carousel with a bunch of other artists. That was pretty amazing. I also really like working with small businesses though. Like there's small brands here in New York City that I love getting to help them, and I'm doing something with a coffee company soon. Small budget, but I just love that I can see the impact on their small business where I can't really see the impact on Nike, right? It's a drop in the bucket for them.
Right. Yeah, like you're one of their artists, right? Rather than like if you're working with this exclusive like small coffee company, like that's going to be your thing for a while. Like you're going to see them like associated with that, at least for that time being. And I feel like you see the results, or whether they're good or bad, a lot more.
Yeah. And I think these small businesses, a lot of them have the best intentions in mind. Like they're using sustainable practices from the beginning. And a lot of these larger brands, they are so old that they like have a lot of rules and red tape to get things done. And I like that sometimes smaller brands, you can take more risks with them and there's less approvals.
Right. How did the How did like the whole Topps series kind of come about? Because I know you're obviously into not only with the skateboarding, but sports and baseball. And I see a lot of that kind of ingrained into the work you do. So did they just approach you?
Yeah. It was December 2019, so pre-pandemic. And I'm really glad that came when it did, because most of my client work fell apart when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, that's perfect timing.
That was like the only project that stayed for the most part. And it carried me through most of that year. With keep helping me stay busy and just financially like covering my bills. But it came out in 2019, like the idea for 2020, there were 20 different artists that they reached out to. And I don't know, I was just on their radar, I suppose. One of them was following me on Instagram, and then they reached out with an email, immediately said yes. I grew up playing baseball and collecting baseball cards, so it was deep in my heart, although I hadn't thought about it in a while. I hadn't been to a baseball game in a decade, maybe. But it's part of my childhood, and I had so many memories and stories that I could put into the cards. Getting to draw some Yankee players was a dream come true.
That's dope.
Yeah. And I ended up doing some spin-off series based on that work, just more collector's items. Once I had that audience.
Was that the stadiums?
That was with Topps, but I did, that was my spin-off series with Topps, with the stadiums. But I did also like a companion card series where I drew like my characters as if like each baseball player had a companion character in this like blob world.
Oh, okay. Like a little ally or whatever.
Yeah, I have one here if you want to see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like this guy.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah, that's very like a lot more your type of style too. I see that a similar kind of look on the the dog. That one's cool.
Yeah, so like I would find these little stories about the baseball players, and I would latch onto them. Like that's actually Ichiro Suzuki's dog. And
right. Is that Akita or something?
His
like
name,
that,
I think, is it's a Shiba Inu.
Oh, Shiba. Okay, yeah.
But I would just latch onto these stories and then make art inspired by that for the actual Topps card, but then do something that I couldn't really do on the Topps card in my own work, and then just kind of sell those two alongside each other in my shop. And it was a really great like little spin-off series while it lasted. Yeah.
Because I remember hearing you mention on like the Topps interview that you would sneak in like maybe that dog or something like that in like the corner of the cards, but it got so small you could only do like so much detail when you're just kind of jamming it in the corner or the borders or whatever.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to go from the large scale murals, because that was my main thing before 2020, and then going into this project where I'm working so small, or at least the finished product would be printed really small, 2 inches, 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches is like the standard size.
Right.
So there is a certain amount of detail that you can pack in there before it just gets illegible. Yeah.
It seems like that timing not only worked for you like with COVID and everything and having a consistent client at a time that was harder, but that also went parallelly with like this whole like big collectible boom, you know, everything from physical items to digital collectibles. Like through COVID, it seems like that shit like 10x'd pretty much, like everything from Pokemon cards to NFTs and all that. So it really was like perfect timing for you to get into that stuff, it seems.
It was definitely a right place, right time kind of moment, but I was ready for it, and I had the style all dialed in. And even though I hadn't done too many portraits of people and I was nervous about that, it was a perfect time to get into the collectibles arena, because I hadn't done much of that. I had done some screen prints. That's about it before that.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's become a really great industry for me to spend a lot of time working in and building in, and even the digital stuff I've gotten really into in the last year with NFTs and trying to tie the physical and the digital together to make unique experiences. I'm loving it. Yeah, it's really fun.
Did that Topps experience kind of spark your interest into getting into your own collectibles and the NFTs and all that stuff?
It sparked my interest for sure, but it also gave me the audience to start with and say, these people, I mean, what was crazy was during that Topps project, there was no sports happening on TV. There were no live games happening. So they started to treat us artists like athletes, like comparing the stats of the cards and having something to follow. So I developed a really strong relationship with these collectors because we were accessible, unlike these professional athletes. I made myself accessible in the comments section of things, and got to really get to know the people who were supporting my work, even if it was just $20 here and there for cards. It was great way to just build that audience that was hungry for this stuff. They already have a collection. It's much easier to sell a piece to somebody who already has a collection going versus trying to get someone who doesn't collect, like a past customer of yours. Maybe they bought something else, a t-shirt, to get them to start collecting these things.
Right.
So that was huge. And I think that was part of why I leaned into it. It's because I had a leg up.
How has that transition then, since you kind of got the lay of the land with the top stuff, pretty easy to go from like this traditional kind of analog world into like, you know, minting NFTs and doing more like digital based art?
It wasn't easy to start transitioning. No, it was really unnatural. It was something where I debated about it for months about what should I put up first, because like your Genesis piece is really important when you put your first NFT out there, and it has to be a true expression of what you're here to do, and ideally who you are as an artist. And I just debated about that for months before I was ready to start. I knew that I could do something like the Topps cards eventually, but I didn't want that to be my first NFT, because that's not like the thing that I would make if I can make anything, right? If I can make anything, I wouldn't make a baseball card if I can make anything as a true expression of who I am. So I think the mentality of the collector mindset, like making things with the collector mindset in mind, like these collectors want to know how many you're producing. They want to know that it's limited, that they're getting it for a decent price, that you're not just going to go reprint more of them later, you know. So that transitioned well. I understood that mindset more going into NFTs more than I would have if I hadn't done the project. But just changing platforms and minting work was really scary for me in the beginning, and I didn't feel natural. But eventually I got the hang of it.
Was your with your NFTs, because I haven't looked too much into like your actual one-of-one stuff. I'm looking at some of it now. Do you pair like the physical piece with it, or is it all just digital stuff?
Yeah, sometimes I pair a physical piece. I'm trying to do both, and I'm realizing that I love making physical art. I'm always going to make physical art. It's where I make better art, honestly. When I'm letting go of perfection, which is easier to do in physical for me at least. Yeah, I'm making better stuff usually. And then I can refine it digitally, but starting physical is always important for me. Who knows? Maybe a few decades from now, I'll say something different. But I think I always want to keep that in mind, that what my roots are physical. And a lot of these people in NFT world aren't going through the trouble to make physicals for their work, because it is work. It's logistics. You have to get that physical piece to somebody, and how do you even know who to send it to if it's an anonymous person online who bought your thing? So there's extra work there, and then just the shipping, the damages, there's a lot of bottlenecks and things that you shouldn't have to deal with as an artist that we got to do in order to sell our physical work. And there's just a lot less friction in this digital world where there is no physical. So I'm doing both because I think as a business person, it's important to explore less logistically challenging sales.
It's also a good, like leaning into the digital, you can get more and more into that, but it's a good, at least like for now, it's a good like kind of gray area, like segue to be like people that maybe want to get into it, but they don't know if they care about just an NFT that much. But if they see like, oh, I'll get the actual canvas or whatever too, like it might, you know, entice a collector to like hop into something that maybe they didn't know too much about at first or whatever.
Yeah, that was one of my bigger fears, was like, after I start minting NFTs, are a lot of people going to abandon my audience because they're not into it, or they're still they're misunderstood still in public eye. Like the headlines are not painting a good picture for NFTs yet. They're still very counterculture. And maybe that'll hopefully change over time. And the people who understand that and see that there's a physical with a digital. I have collectors all over the board. Like everyone has a different entry point to this, and they're at a different learning stage with crypto and with NFTs. So I try to make it really understandable. I offer options that accept USD. and come with physicals. So there's something for everybody.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that whole space, I haven't gotten into it too much. I just actually got a bid on a foundation thing recently, which
congrats.
was cool, but thank you. And I realized, like, you know, there's validity in like some of these arguments to an extent and stuff, but I think NFTs have kind of just become like a martyr for like people to hate crypto in general. You know, like it's an easy thing to attack when you don't understand how like that whole like the actual financial system behind it works. If you just see like some art thing being sold for all this money and then someone's like, it's bad, and then you're like, yeah, like fuck that. You know, it's easy to, you know, write off people, but I try not to, you know, do a lot of that because I think the pros kind of outweigh the cons in the grand scheme, because there's these artists that I know that never would have been able to make money that they're making off their art. And like, I don't know, if you're in in a country that doesn't give you a lot of opportunities in the physical space, and now you're able to make money like online, I don't really see, you know, it seems like a pretty good thing to me, you know, for those people. And I think it should be like looked at with a more open mind in general.
Yeah, for sure. And like in the fine art world, paintings and limited edition prints have been helping artists make a living for a while, or get by and develop that like collector base. But there wasn't an equivalent for animators, for musicians, for video makers. They all had to work for other companies to monetize for the most part, or sell digital products, which are really hard to make money at. You have to like stick with that exclusively for years on those websites where you sell presets, and that's not really like expressive as much as your best work is. So I'm thrilled that there's an avenue for animators. I'm also an animator. I love like subtle animation on top of my 2D pieces. So when I do the physical digital thing, sometimes the digital piece is animated, so it's actually unique from the physical. It's like two different pieces. Yeah,
that's dope. I've been looking at a little bit into more getting into just simple After Effects stuff and things, so I could add some I guess life, for lack of a better word, or like kind of just movement and fluidity to some of the static pieces I have, because I have realized that unless it's just some generative thing, a lot of people in that world, they do like shit to move around, you know. That's the benefit to the digital spaces. You're allowed to create something that can have animation on it.
Yeah, and you can even play with the code and make the art evolve over time. You can make the art give access to things. It's really limitless what you're able to do. And some of these projects coming out, my mind is blown like every week when there's a new innovation of how someone's exploring NFTs. I saw one person tokenize their time. They sold 3 hours of time to collaborate with them. And they said this token represents a 3-hour time collaboration. And he did 4 of them.
That's cool.
And the image was just a clock that had like 3 hours sort of grayed out. But yeah, there's so many different ways to use it as an artist beyond just minting a JPEG.
Right. Do you have you been approached like by any, because you've worked with some of these like bigger brands like we talked about, have any brands approached you trying to get into that space yet, like NFT stuff?
Yeah, there's been a few. Sometimes they have really unreasonable expectations, or they don't really get the culture. They just see it as a way to
make money or whatever.
Make money, stay relevant. There's trends, of course. There's like this 10K collectibles collection thing that's everyone's doing, and brands just want to hop into that. So I've been hit up a few times to do stuff like that. I'm not interested in making 10,000 pieces for a brand. Like if I'm going to do anything large, it's going to be under my own brand first.
Sure.
I haven't even done over 200 pieces. I haven't even done over 20 pieces in a collection. I've done pieces that had additions where the additions added up to over 200, but keeping it pretty small scale for now. And then, there's been some brands that I did say yes to, but they were just for one of ones.
Okay.
Surprisingly, the 2 brands that I said yes to were both NBA teams. One of them was for the Knicks, my home team. One of them was for the Chicago Bulls, which is they're doing a whole thing with like I think 23 artists coming out next month.
Yeah, that's a perfect little segue. I was just looking at the Knicks thing right now because it has one of those characters on it that looks similar to the ones from the Companions, like the blobs or whatever. And so that stuff's like I didn't know that had anything to do with like NFTs and stuff. I saw that. I thought it was just a physical jersey or whatever. What's like the whole project consist of?
So the jersey was a separate project for them. That was the first thing that came out. The NFT, I haven't even announced it yet.
Oh, okay.
And there is a small chance they could cancel it. So I don't want to, that's why I haven't announced it yet anywhere.
Right.
But I did the art, and it's a slightly different piece, but it's a similar theme, like city and Madison Square Garden. I wasn't allowed to just draw like the Knicks players on this NFT. There's certain restrictions.
Oh, okay.
So same thing with the jersey. There were some restrictions with what they could sell legally. So it's a little animated piece that I did inspired by that area of the city and my memories there.
That's cool. That jersey shit's cool too. That must have been cool to actually complete that and be able to hang it up or wear it or whatever.
Yeah, that was amazing. The jersey exhibit last week at MSG, there was, I think, 10 artists that each submitted 2 to 4 jerseys, hand painted 101s, and everyone took such a different approach. Like some people painted them, some people embroidered them, some people screen printed them. It was just really cool to see it all together.
It's cool too, man. I feel like you do, like I know you said you're selective with this stuff and that's why it seems that way, but it's really cool that you've been able to actually work with these things that you could tell that you're genuinely interested in it. Like going back to, just the stuff you like I'm sure as a kid, you liked the Knicks and maybe hated them watching them play and stuff, but it must be cool to just like even your Instagram post, just having the little logo next to it, like that's pretty badass. And I'm sure people are proud of you when they see that and everything.
Yeah. And like, to be fair, I try to play it up. They didn't ask me to make that post. I wanted to make that post. But the Knicks were the first sports game I ever went to. One of the first times I ever came to New York City. I grew up just north of the city. I came when I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old, something like that. And my grandmother brought me to a Knicks game. So it's a very vivid memory that I wanted to just like relive in my head. One of my earliest memories, honestly. And yeah, I have to say though, before I was getting these types of inquiries, I did do a lot of work with brands that I wasn't so passionate about. There was a ton of projects where I didn't feel like it was a great fit, but I had to do it because I had the skills and I needed the money.
Right.
One example of that is like, I work for this really fancy clothing company. They make suits. Like I don't wear suits. I don't even own a suit.
Yeah. Right.
And I worked for them for freelance for 8 months, and I was doing banner ads, like the most boring type of creative work where like the campaign had already been made and I just had to like slice and dice the assets and make banner ads out of it. So
format it all to like web and everything in different print sizes and stuff.
Now there's probably some program that does that for you, but like that was the kind of brands that I was working with, just like not a good fit, but it was like decent budget and I had to do it and I learned some stuff. And then, flash forward 6-7 years. Now I think I've just put out there in the world the things that I want to get for that long, and more skateboarding stuff, more, streetwear stuff, more people who appreciate abstract art and can understand that my character I'm not trying to draw like a literal person with my character, and it takes like the right kind of brand to embrace that.
Well, it's like, that whole thing, like even the professors would tell me in school, like, don't put the work in your portfolio that you don't want to be doing, like, yeah, you can do that shit on the side. And like, the more I need money, my threshold for like bullshit brands or projects, I'll definitely work on them. But once you kind of start establishing yourself, it's good to, like for you example, like you're not going to, if you put sports stuff and skating stuff, you're going to get more of that. You're not going to put the suit project in your portfolio because you don't want to do that again,
Exactly. Yeah. But I would always hang on to those small wins. Like when I got to do some hand lettering for that brand.
Right.
And I would just isolate the things that I really enjoyed making out of each project and just put those in my portfolio. Like I hand lettered the word archives, I remember, like really, really well for one of their campaigns. And I would always try to sneak that into the banner ads and into the stuff that I was doing so that I could be developing those skills and getting them out there and saying, yeah, I did lettering for I'll say it was Brooks Brothers was the brand, but it's like, it wasn't a great fit, but I can still say that whenever it comes up. And I can say, oh, check this out. I did this for Brooks Brothers. If it does come up,
Right.
I have something that I'm proud of that I made from that brand anyway.
That's good. I'm excited, man, to see the shit you keep doing, and that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear a little bit about the journey you've been through and everything. And is there anything else you want to plug or shout out before we get out of here?
So my next big project that I've been working on is a mix of my trading card world, the NFT world, and skateboarding.
Okay.
And I'm super excited about it. I met the guy who was responsible for getting skateboarding into the Olympics in 2020.
Oh, dope.
And he approached me to do trading cards for each of the skaters on the team for the
That's
next
tight.
team. And so I've been illustrating each skater, their signature tricks, and getting it to be a really nice collection of physical and digital collectibles. And it's like, I can't think of a better match for a project. I'm just so excited to see the reactions from the skaters and from the public too, because it's like skateboarding and trading cards hasn't really been done in a cool way.
Yeah,
and
it's about time. That shit will look cool, I bet.
It might even spur like a little market or a new trend in that card world. So that's the thing that I'm most excited about. That's going to be coming out in the next month or two. Other than that, I would love to connect with you watching this. If you want to hit me up, I have my own little Discord community. That's a little plug. It's just like cool to share what we're working on, what we're learning, support each other, and hopefully some of my network can help you as well.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Dope. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that goes, and that hopefully that does spark some grander interest, and we see some like Thrasher baseball or skate cards or some shit in the future. Thank you though, man. Again, I really appreciate you coming on, and it was great to finally meet you and everything.
Yeah, great to meet you, man. Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Take it easy.
Take care.
Peace out. I hope you enjoyed this episode and are feeling creative and inspired. I also wanted to one last time thank our sponsor, Zyro. Zyro is a cool online website builder that's perfect for making your portfolio. I like Zyro because it's easy to use and the most affordable option on the market. Zyro is the perfect place for setting up your online portfolio, selling prints, or whatever you want to do. For a limited time only, you can get exclusive discount plus 3 months free with any yearly plan. All you got to do is use my code Jesse, Jesse, or click the link in the description. Thank you, Zyro, for sponsoring this episode.